Everything begins with a boy named Haruka Takumi returning home almost at midnight after a hard day at work. Although he had been working at the same place for 2 years, the constant overtime exhausted him greatly. But looking at the clock, he remembered that it was at this time that night he met that special person. With these thoughts, he decided to return home quickly to see her again. When he got home, he heard someone scratching at the door and excitement as if she was waiting just for him. And it turned out that it was his white dog, who quickly ran up to him and jumped into his arms. He was also happy to see her. And for dinner, he brought her her favorite sausage. He named him Pearlio, and at first, he chose this name because he imagined a strong, athletic male dog, but then it turned out to be a girl. However, this moment was so funny to him that he decided to keep the name unchanged. Then he decided to do something for himself, but suddenly he felt dizzy and his brain started to hurt. At first he thought it was an earthquake, but quickly realized that it was he who was shaking. Then he fell to the floor and fainted. And Levko meanwhile continued barking, trying to wake him up. Later, waking up, he heard her barking and got up. Right in front of him stood a huge white wolf, and it scared him very much. He immediately thought that it was probably a dream, since such big wolves do not exist at all. When it came closer and closer, he became afraid. He thought it might eat him. But in reality, it was the opposite. It could even lead to space. And it really impressed him. When he looked more closely into her eyes, he finally understood that it was Leo, and as soon as he said her name, her face shone even more, and she just looked at him with her big eyes. This definitely confirmed that it really was Leo, but he was still very surprised at how much she had grown. He could not even imagine such a thing, but suddenly she turned her head away from him for a moment. And he wondered what a mystery she always was to him, even from the moment he found her. She moved as if imitating people, and sometimes it seemed that she really understood everything he said. But when she became so big, it seemed to him that it was all just a dream. But then Leo turned around and wanted him to give her a ride. He really liked it. But he suggested not to write anything yet, and first find out where they are now. As they moved further into the forest, it seemed that it had no end. There was no exit in sight, so he just looked up at the sky. They understood that they needed to find the exit quickly, otherwise they would be in trouble. He was already thirsty, and he hoped to find a river or at least something, but Lev heard this literally a few minutes later. She led him straight to the river. He was surprised that she knew this place. And he began to drink water from the river when he felt more energetic. He decided to rest a little by the river, and she laid her head on his lap. It was unusual for her, because before she easily fit on his lap, but now even her head did not fit there. Moreover, her head seemed heavier than her whole body during pregnancy, and hearing this, Leo was very embarrassed. Putting all these thoughts aside, he wondered what to do next. He just suddenly found himself in the middle of the forest and didn't even notice it. And he almost didn't doubt that his knowledge about survival without fuel would not be needed here. But he noticed one thing: the air here was very fresh and pleasant. He doesn't even remember when he last could relax like this after all his affairs. He looked at Leo and apologized to her for paying little attention lately because of work. Suddenly Leo woke up and heard that someone or something was approaching them. He asked her what it was, and suddenly a large, bright creature appeared before them. It was an orc. He was very surprised, as he had only seen this creature before in video games. But it was completely unclear what it was doing there. Suddenly Leo rushed straight at him. She quickly took it out of her mouth. With that orc in her mouth, she approached him as if offering it to him, and he asked if she was hinting that they needed to eat it, and she nodded. Since they had nothing else, he agreed, and she helped him with it. She lights a fire by throwing a small fireball, and then cuts the meat with her claws. All this surprised him greatly, and he thought that from the moment he woke up in this forest, it was as if he had lost his sense of reality, and now he didn't even want to think about it, just go with the flow. The two of them sat by the fire, waiting for the meat to cook, and as soon as it was ready, Leo's mouth watered, and he immediately started eating. Takumi also tried a piece, and was pleasantly surprised at how tasty the dish was. It tasted almost like pork. After they ate, he asked her if she had any idea how to get out of this forest. But she just looked at him in surprise, and he realized that his request was a bit strange. So he decided to just walk along the river and see where it would lead them. As they walked through the forest, he noticed that Leia looked very happy. She was walking with a wide smile on her face, so he asked what was making her so glad. And suddenly, they heard someone loudly calling for help. They quickly ran to that person, hoping they could help her and get out of the forest together. When they arrived there, they saw a woman being attacked by a... She turned to Chumi sent Leo to help her. And again, she defeated the orc in just a few seconds and saved that woman. He praised her for a job well done. Then he approached the woman and asked if she was all right, and she was still in shock and amazement at what had just happened before her eyes. But when he looked at her more closely, he was surprised at how beautiful she was, and even for a moment wondered while she asked if he was all right. And he told her that it meant nothing. She thanked him for saving her from that orc and asked if the silver fenware was his companion. Neither he nor Leo understood what she meant, so he asked her who familiars were, and she explained that they were creatures that obey his will. Hearing all these terms, he began to wonder if he had actually fainted during the video game. And now it turned out that it was all just a dream. But he still asked her to explain what these so-called monsters were, but she was really surprised that he did not even know who these monsters were. He crossed it out and said he knew about monsters, but she also mentioned soldier fenders, and he became curious about what that was. And she replied that behind him stood some silver fenderer, although he did not understand at all what was being. He decided not to object for now and just nodded, confirmed that Leo really was a silver fenmer, and pretended he had known it for a long time. She was very surprised, as she could not even imagine that people could tame even a silver fennel. He asked her what was so special about. She said that these creatures were the strongest of all monsters and never obeyed people, no matter how much they were forced. He looked at Leo, wondering how she could be the strongest monster. She just blushed, listening to all those compliments. She also added that about silver wings they say, they are faster than the wind and can shoot fireballs straight from their mouths. She had such claws that could tear anything apart. It was rumored that even her fangs could break everything in the world, and Takagi recalled that he really saw her do it. Moreover, she explained to him that the shine of the silver fenneler's fur is considered a symbol of their strength, and her royal emblem is also decorated with the image of a silver Takumi introduced Leo to her, and stroking her, said that he did not care whether she was the legendary silver Fenrir or someone else, because to him she was simply his partner. She still did not understand how he managed to get the silver fennel as a partner, and asked who he really was. To this he replied that he was an ordinary guy who could be met anywhere. She did not believe that everything happened exactly as they said. Not everyone could become a friend of Silver Fenmer. She was sure that he was definitely a well-known and respected person, but he told her again that he was nothing special and had no important acquaintances in society. She showed herself to her as her Rukatakumi. She tried to remember where she had heard this name before, but it did not remind her of anything at all, and he just repeated that he was no different from others. Then he asked her what her name was. She politely introduced herself as Claire Liberty and thanked him for saving her from danger. When she introduced herself, Takumi could not help but notice how beautiful she was. Then he asked her what she was doing alone in this forest. She replied that she was looking for medicinal herbs to make medicine, but during the search she went too far. And then this word frightened her, and the horse suddenly bolted from the spot. She asked what his story was and what he was doing here, but he himself was not completely sure about it. He told her that he just woke up in this forest, not knowing why or how, and has been here ever since. He walked inside there, which surprised her greatly. Seeing that he did not even know why he ended up in this forest, she wondered what could have happened. He also really wanted to find out. So she asked if he could help her, and he agreed, which pleased her very much. She thanked him, smiling broadly. Later, they all began searching for a herb called Capword. It turned out that she just wanted him to help her find healing herbs. Also, with him, she had nothing to fear from wild animals. Takumi thought that based on the description of the herb with a cap, which she talked about, most likely they were looking for wormwood. He remembered that this plant usually grows near the river. But they could not find it at all. He got tired of searching and sat down to rest. He thinks that now it is worth taking a break. Suddenly, he noticed that a plant was growing under his hand, and he just looked at it in confusion. In fact, this plant was simply planted, and it appeared out of nowhere. But anyway, he quickly informed Claire that he had already found it. Several of these grew there, and when she looked more closely, she confirmed that this was exactly what they were looking for. She thanked him for all the help, because it was thanks to him that she managed to find. She picked some of this plant and put it in her bag. Then she thanked him again for everything, but he assured her that there was no need to thank him. Now she only had to figure out how to get back, because the orc scared her horse, and she did not know what to do next. Suddenly Leo started barking and sat right in front of them, as if inviting, "Jump on my back." Claire was a little nervous at first. But still Takumi helped her, and together they climbed on. She was simply amazed when she saw that she was actually riding a silver fennel. Meanwhile, Takumi asked Leo if she at least knew where they needed to go, but as expected, she had no idea. Claire was showing them the way, and finally they came out of the forest. Around them was only a plain covered with ice as far as the eye could see. He did not remember there being such rural areas in Japan. This again made him wonder where he was now. If all this was not just a strange dream, he wondered if he had actually ended up in another world. But for now, he decided not to worry about it and to act gradually, step by step. Finally, they arrived at a large house, and the guards aimed their weapons at them, but Claire asked them to lower them, and everyone rejoiced seeing that she was fine. And more importantly, they asked her what kind of monster was with her. She told them that this was their honored guest, and they must show her all respect. Everyone immediately obeyed. She got down, and the guards opened the gates. She invited Kume to her home, and he was simply stunned when he saw that she lived in such a luxurious mansion. Suddenly, a butler named Sebastian ran out onto the street. He was very glad that she returned safe, because if anything had happened to her, he would not have been able to face her father. She also apologized for making him worry. Then she asked how Teclara was doing. He told her that she was still lying in bed with a high fever, and these medicines were very necessary for her recovery, so Kume thought that this was exactly why she was looking for medicinal herbs. Sebastian said that the medicines they needed were not available either in their estate or in the nearest town, and Claire explained that this was exactly why she went to the forest to find these medicines. There she was attacked by an orc, and she was already sure she would die when suddenly Takumi came to her aid and saved her. Sebastian was impressed when he heard this. He bowed to him, sincerely thanked him for saving the young lady, and introduced himself as the butler of the Liberty family. Takami replied that there was no need to thank him, because ultimately, thanks should go to Leo. Sebastian looked at her and was a little confused, wondering if his acquaintance was really a silver fenderer. Claire confirmed that she really was a silver fenrir, because she herself saw how with those claws she effortlessly tore the orc apart. He was simply amazed, as he had never even imagined he would see such a thing with his own eyes, and she perfectly understood his emotions. Silver wings became the true symbol of their kingdom, as these creatures were considered indomitable. Imagining that someone could tame such a creature and make it their companion seemed simply incredible. Takumi explained to them that saying he tamed her is an exaggeration, because he just sheltered her a few years ago. Therefore, he does not call her his familiar, but rather prefers to say that she is his partner. But this only surprised them even more. Claire noticed that silver fenders always value their pack very much and never stray far, so it seemed strange to her how he could have taken one if the parents were supposed to be nearby. And here Tatsumi thought about the fact that she was Maltese even before she got here. He just happened to see her when he was passing by. She was curled up in a cardboard box by the road, abandoned by someone. But of course he could not explain it to them, and Sebastian just stood and looked at him, wondering who he was. But Claire said that all questions could be asked later. And now the most important thing for them was Tellura, and Takumi even got some capvert for her, which surprised Sebastian again. But first she wanted to properly greet him, and he agreed to it. So on behalf of all the servants of the State of Liberty, he greeted Takami and Leo at the estate. Takumi was a little nervous, because he was invited to such a luxurious estate for the first time. As soon as he entered, he immediately saw a whole line of servants lined up to greet the young lady. He was simply amazed when he saw how many there really were. Claire handed over the work on the cap to Sebastian. She thanked all the servants for the greetings, and also told that the man and woman nearby saved her life in a very dangerous situation, so she asked everyone to treat them with respect. Two maids approached, thanked him for saving their lady, and introduced themselves. Layla and Helda, they will now help him with everything necessary. He greeted both, but immediately noticed that Zelda was clearly nervous next to them. And you think about how to behave so that he feels comfortable with you. But on the other hand, he thought that he himself had no right to say anything, because he was also simply amazed by everything that was happening before his eyes. For him, it was too loud. Claire said she would go visit her sister Tyler. and asked two comrades to make sure he was well taken care of. When she was climbing the stairs, he thought that she was really a very kind person. She went far into the forest to save her sick sister. After this, the maids asked him to follow them. They were going to take him to the room. And he asked if his partner could go with them. Layla assured him that there was enough space for both, and Gelda shouted that it was not a problem at all. So he went after them, and they showed him his luxurious suite. They offered to make him some tea and asked if his familiar wanted anything as well. He replied that water or milk would be fine for her. They immediately obeyed and left the room, although he assured them there was no need to hurry. He thought that his Japanese desire not to bother anyone had shown itself again. He sat down and saw Leo calmly dozing. He immediately felt that it was safe in this mansion. But still, the beautiful lady invited him to her estate because he saved her life. The whole experience seemed like a fairy tale or a dream to him, so he was even more convinced that it was just a figment of his imagination. At that moment, Leo woke up, and although quite some time had passed, he still could not believe how big he had become. The maids also returned and brought him tea. Gelda poured milk for Leo, but it was clear that she was afraid, so Takumi advised Leo to thank her first before drinking. And she did it. She simply barked at her, which at first scared her a lot, but she quickly calmed down and was even surprised. Then Kumi assured her that there was no need to be so afraid. She wouldn't bite her or do anything bad. And they both began to apologize to him. Layla pointed at her and said that one should not behave like that with their guests. Then Kumi explained that he was not angry at her at all and understood well why she behaved that way, since Leo really looked a bit scary, but Layla, on the contrary, said that his assistant even seemed cute to her. Despite his large size, his favorite spoke quietly, thanking Hel so as not to scare her, and it looked very cute. Then Kume laughed and agreed that it was indeed a sensible thought. In fact, he thought that Zelda was very similar to Leo, the same sweet girl. He apologized in advance if he was asking too much from her, but just wanted her not to be so afraid of him, and Hel still could not get over the fact that he called her cute. She quickly bowed to him, obediently fulfilling his will. Layla praised him for his ability to speak well, and he just laughed and said that he simply says what he thinks. A few minutes later, Claire entered his room and apologized for making him wait so long. He asked her how her sister was feeling now, and she replied that her condition had hardly changed since she went to the forest. She believed that the medicine that could be made from the cap he found might help her, and he hoped so too. She thanked him once again for everything he had done for her, and then asked if it was easy for him to tell her where he was. She had already realized that he was not a bad person, since he saved her from the orc and even helped find Capworth. It is fair to say that she owed him much more than just her life, but something was bothering her. He did not understand silver protectors at all, although one was right next to him as a partner. Moreover, he even asked her about monsters in general. Everyone here knew about it. It was common knowledge. And he understood that it was quite normal for her to suspect him. But in fact, he himself could not explain it. Seeing that he was lost in thought, she quickly apologized and assured him that it was not necessary to say anything if he was uncomfortable, because these were just things she was curious about and nothing more. By the way, speaking of curiosity, she also noted that she had never seen clothes like his before, and he was a little surprised that this was what caught her attention. She admitted that because of all this, and also because he had a silver Fenvar as a partner, she really wanted to learn more about him. He told her that she would hardly believe his story. She replied that she had seen Leo sincerely follow him. Therefore, even if his story sounded incredible, she would still believe him. Since everything was exactly like that, you are grateful to them for trusting him. And he agreed to tell him his story, how he ended up in that forest. He explained everything to her, how he woke up among the trees. One thing especially stuck in his memory, and it was, Leo became significantly bigger. Claire was surprised and said that silver wings were supposed to be large, but he replied that he was not familiar with silver wings because he was not even acquainted with them. But his Leo was supposed to be a little dog, so small that she could be carried in arms. She asked if he was really telling her the truth, and he confirmed that it was so. Leo was just a stray puppy that he had once found and had been raising since then. That is why he was so surprised when he saw how she had changed and become different in size and build. Considering everything he had seen, he assumed that Leo could have turned into a silver Fenvar. Claire tried to believe him, but she had never heard of an animal simply turning into a silver Fenvar. Then he said he wanted to add one more thing. Apparently something like a freezing was done to him, but she had no idea what that was. He told her that he came from another world, completely different from this one. In his world, creatures like orcs and fenars exist only in fictional stories. Hearing all this, she simply did not know what to say. He understood perfectly well that it was hard for her to believe him immediately. He also added that in his world, there are many stories where people end up in another world, and usually they are given some magical abilities. In this case, he guessed that Lev gained powers by turning into his silver fennel. In the previous world, she was just a little dog, but having come here, he believed that she was given a special power, and that is why she transformed into a silvery fennel. Claire was simply shocked and did not know what to say. Sebastian approached her to talk about this situation, but she told him that Takumi had already proven his reliability, so she was inclined to trust him. He no longer argued because that was what she said. He decided not to say anything about it, since she really understood people well, and the maids agreed with him. Also, Kum sincerely thanked her for believing in her. When all this was over, he asked him if he wanted to stay here for now, since he had nowhere else to go. And also, her sister Telluro also wants to personally thank him. He agreed to her proposal and was grateful to her. Meanwhile, she asked Sebastian's maids to immediately prepare a room for him. After they left, he asked Claire if the medicine was already prepared. She replied that not yet, because first they needed to wait for the coating on the cap to dry. Therefore, they expect the medicine to be ready no earlier than tomorrow noon. Then he asked if they had enough necessary medicine at all, and she answered that yes, there was enough. To cure Tillera of the illness, only one dose was sufficient. In fact, using all 5 would have been too much. At that moment, Leo began sniffing the herbs and told her that this was not her food, and Claire guessed that she was probably hungry. She suggested that the cooks prepare something for her, and also added that they should arrange a welcome party for both of them. She asked him what Leia would like to eat, and he in response asked if there were sausages in this world. She confirmed that they really have sausages. And because of this, Leo was very happy and began to hug him. During this, he accidentally hit the table, and the herbs fell to the floor. He caught them and wondered how exactly such a thing could be medicine. But then he noticed something and asked Claire to look at it. Strangely, the stain had already dried, although it was still fresh not long ago. She wondered what could have changed it so quickly. But now it did not matter, so he suggested she check if it could be used to make medicine. She agreed and quickly ran to Sebastian to give it to him. When she left, only he and Leo remained, and they would have to wait for dinner. But still he wondered what really happened to those herbs. Later, when the sun had already set, they just sat and waited. When Claire and Sebastian returned, she thanked him for what he did with the herbs. Thanks to this, they were able to prepare the medicine faster, so her sister Talera would soon recover as well. He was pleased to hear this, and he wished her a speedy recovery. Sebastian approached him and asked if it was true that when he touched the hat, it immediately became dry. He explained to him that he caught the herbs literally for a second as they were falling, but when he was about to put them back on the table, they were already dry. That is why Claire and Sebastian think that he might also have some special gift. In this world, a gift was called a special grace from the gods, which, according to rumors, only one infant in a million received. Because of this, the owners of gifts in this kingdom remained only in old records. People who had a special gift became true masters in their craft. For example, if someone received the blessing of blacksmithing, they could create swords that could cut through anything. And if someone received the gift of magic, they could effortlessly use magic and do it much more powerfully than other people. No one had heard of magic that could dry plants, but they believed that maybe he had such a gift. Claire recalled how he had previously told them stories about people who ended up in other worlds, and asked if he himself had received some special power, like Leo. After all, the ability specifically to dry plants seemed very strange. She suggested that this might be only one use of his abilities, and in reality, he was capable of much more. She suddenly remembered that there is a device that analyzes gifts, and suggested using it to find out exactly what gift he has. And he, meanwhile, was still trying to understand all this, and was surprised that there is such a convenient machine here too. When everything was decided, she suggested having dinner first. He thanked her for that and admitted that he could no longer wait long, as he was very hungry. She agreed because she was hungry too. After they finished eating, he praised them, saying that it was very tasty. And she was simply happy that he liked it. She also understood that some of their customs might seem strange to him, so she assured him that he could freely ask any questions. Since she said that, he recalled her previous words about magic and told everyone about it. In the world from which he came, magic did not exist at all. This surprised them greatly. She asked if he was sure about that, and he replied that such things only happen in fairy tales, not in real life. Then she called Sebastian and asked him to explain how magic works. He was a little glad that he could tell about it. Meanwhile, Takami realized that he was simply a person who loves to explain things. Sebastian told him that magic works very simply. It is just the use of mana, which is in every person. In fact, every living creature has mana within, and without it, or if it is completely lost, living is no longer. However, having mana did not yet mean that everyone was capable of using magic. The most important thing was to pronounce the correct spell. This allowed accumulating mana in the body, transforming it, and releasing the magic you desire. Depending on the type of magic, spells could be similar, since there are 4 main magical elements: fire, water, wind, and earth. Each element has its own style of spells, and the power of magic can vary depending on how long the spell is recited. There are even records that say that to create powerful magic, one must read the spell continuously for a whole day. Takumi was interested to learn how to perform the simplest magic, and Sebastian showed it to him by using the magic of a fire candle. He explained that the spell transforms his mana into fire, and thanks to this he can create a small and unstable flame, similar to that which burns in a candle. This magic is often used in everyday life, and Kume simply could not believe his eyes when he saw this. Sebastian added that if he wanted to use stronger magic, he would have to pronounce the spell 2 or even 3 times longer. But if the fight with the monster had already begun, there was no guarantee that they would manage to use such a spell before the monster attacked them. That is why there was a method of silent spells, and it was to solve that difficult task. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door, and she ran into the room, loudly exclaiming, "Tightly." It was her sister Talora, who now looked completely healthy. Claire was very surprised to see her and asked if she had already recovered. The little girl replied that yes, and that she felt even better than before. She was glad to see this and turned back to Kuma. She apologized to him for interrupting the conversation, and he assured her that it was no problem. In fact, he was also glad that her sister had recovered. Talora asked her older sister who he was, and she told that he is a very important guest for her, since once he saved her from an orc attack, and also he found the medicinal plant that cured her. He met her, and the young girl did this. Claire said that although she feels good now, she has just recovered and should still rest in bed, but she did not want to do that because she was terribly tired of sitting in her room all day long. Hume also understood this feeling and agreed that one does not want to rest when full of strength. Claire simply did not know what to object. But still, she sincerely rejoiced that her younger sister is now managing so wonderfully. Then she noticed Leo, who was just sitting nearby, and asked Claire where they got this dog from. To this she replied that she is not a dog, she is a silver. Takumi introduced her to his partner Leo, and she was surprised to learn that his partner is a silver fenrir. Leo approached her, and she began to lick him. This reminded Takumi how she loves to play with children. Talora looked at her older sister and asked if she could really touch her, and she replied that she could, since Takumi said she loves children. She was very happy and began to play with Leo, enjoying the moment. And Claire thanked him once again for helping her sister. To this he replied that all the efforts were worth it to see her smile and laughter. Moreover, she also wanted to thank Leo, because it was thanks to her that her sister is now so happy and glowing with joy. Later, everyone left the room so he could rest, and Layla said goodbye, wishing him good night. He made the bed and finally was able to rest after such a strange day. And when he looked at Leo, he saw that she had also immediately fallen asleep. He thought that if this really was a dream, it was too long, because he still hadn't woken up, so he decided that he had probably really ended up in another world. But while he was thinking about all this, he had already been arrested, even before he realized what had happened. The next morning he heard Leo barking. However, he did not want to get up at all, so he asked her to let him sleep a little longer. Then suddenly he heard Claire's voice, who jokingly remarked that he did not look like a person who loves the morning at all. He woke up and was surprised to see that she and Taler were just standing nearby waiting for him to wake up. He greeted her and thanked her for providing him with a wonderful place where he could sleep well. She offered him to join breakfast, which was almost ready, and he gratefully agreed. Then she asked Tilur if she would join them, but Tilur said she wanted to play a little more with Leo. Takumi was very happy when he saw that she liked his girlfriend so much, and she nodded, confirming that she really loved her. Even more importantly, she asked him not to address her formally and not to call her madam. She suggested simply calling her by her name. First of all, he was older than her, and the white Fenrir obeyed him, so she was sure he was an extraordinary person. Therefore, the girl believed that she should behave politely, not the other way around. He agreed to do this, and she was very happy, but suddenly her belly began to grow, and of course, she got hungry. The two of them went forward and were already waiting for a pleasant breakfast with him, but he said he would join a little later, after freshening up. But when they left the room, he remembered that he didn't even have spare clothes and already smelled a little unpleasant. Moreover, his beard had started to grow and needed to be shaved, but he doubted that there were razors in this world. However, he remembered seeing men here with smoothly shaved faces, so he decided to simply ask Sebastian about it. For now, he adjusted his boots and went to have breakfast with. After arguing in the dining room, they all sat together and ate. When he finished eating, he called Sebastian and asked him to come over. He asked if he could borrow spare clothes because he had none of his own and also wanted to shave his beard. Sebastian initially apologized for not noticing his simple needs and assured that everything would soon be delivered directly to his room. Talura was also finishing her dish and asked Claire if she could go play with Leo. Kyume also said that Leo had already finished his food. He also asked Claire if she could play with Talura because she really liked it. Claire did not object at all, and they decided to go to the garden together. But before that, he asked her to watch Leo for a moment because he needed to return to his room for one thing, and she agreed. When he returned to his room, Layla was already there. She brought everything he needed and hoped these things would be convenient for him. She gave him a knife so he could trim his beard. After that, she said goodbye and told him to call boldly if he needed anything, and he remained a little confused and wondered if he really should have used a knife instead of a razor. But since he had no other options, he decided to use it, although he had never done so before. There are a few small scratches that itch a lot. He was even a bit stunned when he washed his face, but after some time, everything became fine. And so he went out to the garden to join everyone. When Claire saw him in new clothes and freshly shaved, she was surprised at how young and refreshed he looked, like a completely different person. He thanked her for the kind words. She also added that the new sneakers suited him very well. For this, he thanked Sebastian for everything he had done for him and was simply glad that he could help him. When this issue was resolved, he rejoiced seeing Talura running lively around, and Claire thanked him once again for finding Capward in the forest. It really helped a lot. He noted that not all the credit was his, since it was she who set out from the estate to look for those herbs. Sebastian added that the adventure almost gave him a heart attack. He was so worried. She understood what he wanted and promised that next time she would not bother him so much. But then Takumi whispered to her that she seemed to be hinting that next time she would bother him a little again. She just laughed, and Sebastian heard it all well. He asked me to be a bit more serious with her in similar situations, but he himself laughed and said it was a trifle. Moreover, he really thought that all this was just part of her charm. This really surprised her. Hearing this from him, she began to blush, thinking that he had called her charming. He noticed this and asked if everything was all right, but she replied that nothing had happened. Siege 6. Later, he left the mansion and went by carriage. It turned out that they were heading to the city to take care of his main affairs, such as picking out clothes. Talura also wanted to go with them, but since she had just recovered, Claire insisted that she stay at the estate. Now they were left alone on the road together with a few guards, and he asked her if she was really sure about her decision. She assured him that he did not need to worry about anything at all, not even the expenses. She would pay for everything. He bowed and thanked her for everything she had done for him. Lev was also walking nearby and recalled their recent conversation about gifts. He wondered if there would be an opportunity to explore the mine in the city they were heading to, and Sebastian told him that it was quite possible. First, they would buy everything necessary and then find out if he had abilities. He even offered to personally take him to the place where it could be checked. So they immediately decided how they would spend that day while talking about it. Takumi was still curious about what exactly the gift really was. Although he had already been explained that these were different abilities, he could not understand why some people have the gift and others do not, and what makes those born with such powers special. According to them, there were people who could use their abilities literally from birth, and there were those who lived their whole lives without even suspecting their gifts and found out about them only as adults. He also assumed that there were so few studies about people with gifts, precisely because of the small number of those who have them. But here Claire interrupted him and said that what really matters is not this, but how a person decides to use their talent. He did not argue with this and fully agreed with her. They finally reached the city, and of course, many were surprised to see the silvery fennel calmly walking the streets. Sebastian dropped them off and asked them to wait a bit while he parked the carriage. While they waited for him, Takumi noticed with surprise how lively the city was. Claire wondered to herself what kind of city this was Rakdos. He said that he was really surprised by the number of people in the city, even though they hadn't even gone inside yet, and she completely understood him. She told him that this city used to be called Quinter, but it started to develop because it was the only road connecting other districts to the capital. The city became the only route to the capital, mainly because there were continuous forests and mountains around. Its proximity to the capital also played a role, but precisely because of the difficult terrain, there was simply no other road. He asked her if she meant the same organization he served in, and she confirmed that yes, that was exactly the forest stretched to the south and west of Rakdos, and mountains towered to the north. And the worst part, both these places were full of monsters. Therefore, the only safe path led through the city, and that is why there were always so many people here. At that moment, Sebastian returned and suggested walking through the shops to find everything Kumina needed. They came to the market, where there were a lot of people. She told him that this was the largest market in this city. In fact, she also often buys groceries and all necessary ingredients here. Leo immediately noticed a sausage stand and started to drool, and Takami told her to hold back, which made her a little upset. Claire was amused by how much she liked sausages, and he also added that she simply adored them. She could instantly rush to them as soon as she saw them. So she decided to ask the cooks to prepare a special dish with sausage especially for Leo for dinner, and this news made her very happy. Sebastian suggested first taking care of his clothes and advised visiting the tailor, who was very— So they went to the tailor, and he was very glad when he saw that Lady Claire herself had come to him. His name was Horton, and she told him that she wanted him to sew several suits for Takumi. Hearing this, Takami wondered if she actually meant tailor's plays. And he told her that it was not at all necessary to sew to order, because ready-made clothes suited him perfectly, but she on her part. And he did not even suspect that ready-made boots already— Sebastian Britter says that most people just buy ready-made cleats that more or less fit in size, instead of ordering them custom-made. And it turned out that she heard about this for the first time, because all her life she had even more things made to order, and Takumi stood and marveled that she was a true noble lady. Then he asked Horton simply to show him where the ready-made clothing department was located. Claire said that there was no point in buying him ready-made cleats, since she could purchase specially made ones for him. But he only thought about the fact that even when buying ordinary things, he already felt as if he owed them a lot. That is why he did not intend to buy anything expensive, so as not to increase this debt. And suddenly she insisted that he have at least one suit made to order, and it really surprised him. Later, after shopping, Hart assured them that his goods would be ready in a week, and Taekyum thanked him for the help. They left the store and decided to visit several different places nearby to pick up some more of his things. But suddenly a group of men approached them and drew their attention. They needed money, and seeing that everyone was well dressed, the men decided that they were rich, so they asked them for money. Two guards approached closer and warned them not to come closer. But the men asked them again if they really wanted to fight, since the forces were unequal, 6 against 2. Meanwhile, Takumi stood and thought about how banal their conversations were. But then Leo stepped forward, and she looked straight at them. The men were amazed and could not believe how big the wolf standing before them was, while the lion calmly approached closer. The man became upset and in despair made a last attempt. He tried to attack her with a knife, but she simply took it and bit the knife so hard that she broke it in half. All the men stood shocked and could not believe their eyes. And Takumi just patted her and reminded her that one should not eat what is not food. The man dropped to his knees and asked Claire and Kuma what they should do with them now. She asked one of her guards to call the city watch here, and he immediately carried out the order. The second guard, together with Sebastian, tied everyone up. Claire said that the city guards should better maintain order because there are always many people here. Takumi asked her if such people often appear here. She replied that such cases happen, but usually the victims are merchants or travelers. The men tried to break free from the ropes and warned that they would retaliate for this, but Kuma and Leo just looked at them in such a way that they immediately fell silent. The soldiers came inside and apologized for the delay in response. They personally apologized to Claire for the social services oversight and promised that they would catch the robbers without leaving Delhi. Later, when everything had calmed down, she quickly apologized to Takumi because she did not want to use his partner to scare those worthless hooligans, but Takumi assured her that nothing terrible had happened. In fact, it was Leo who decided to intervene in all this fuss. Having resolved this issue, they continued their shop. They were already about to go further when suddenly a voice stopped them. It was a girl who asked them for a little time. She became curious whether that wolf was his familiar, and she also asked if Lady Claire was really with them. Both fell silent for a moment. And then he told her that he actually preferred to call Leo his partner, not just an assistant. And to her next question, he also confirmed that it was Lady Claire. As soon as she heard this, she immediately fell to her knees before them. They thanked her for visiting them and apologized for not noticing her earlier. Claire explained to her that she did not come on business today. Therefore, in fact, they had no reason to altogether pay her respect. Takumi was confused and did not understand what she meant by all of them, but when he looked around, he saw a whole crowd of people watching her. This really impressed him. The woman immediately apologized, but wanted to learn more about the wolf. Claire looked at Takumi and asked if they should tell, and he did not care. So first she asked the woman her name, and she replied that her name was Esmeralda. She saw how they fought with those hooligans, and this she-wolf also had shiny silver fur and great height, and her jaws easily broke a sword, so she could not help but consider herself a true silver shield. Claire said that she guessed correctly and confirmed. The wolf before them was indeed a silver-tailed fanreer, but Claire assured that there was no need to fear her. However, no one believed this, and everyone clearly feared her. And Takumi added that there was no need to be so afraid, because in reality she was kind and had a good heart. Emerald believed that silver fenders were the most dangerous creatures, and she did not want to believe that she was as calm as he claimed. But then he simply told Leo to sit, and she immediately obeyed him, which greatly surprised everyone. He again assured them that she would not harm anyone, and the fact that she calmly walked through this city and caused no problems should have been sufficient reason for them to believe this. Then he called Emerald to come closer and allowed her to pet Leo. To show them that she was not as scary as they thought, while she petted her fur, Leo simply stayed nearby. Emre watched this with pleasure and was surprised that she was really so calm. Moreover, she noticed that her fur had become very soft, and she could not even imagine that the fur of a silver fender could be so pleasant to the touch. Claire also added that she too lives in her villa, so in fact there was no reason to fear her, and Emmer bowed along with everyone. She apologized to them for making conclusions immediately without knowing anything. She was really ashamed that her fears made her act that way, but Kumiya assured her that she did not need to apologize. But then he noticed that other people were looking at them, and they asked if they could pet her too. Everyone literally lined up to pet Leo, and quite some time passed before the crowd dispersed. But most importantly, Leo endured it all and brought joy to everyone. After 2 hours, they finally reached the best shop in Raktas, which looked more like a store than anything else. It resembled a large house, which surprised him greatly. The shop owner Hain greeted them warmly and was very happy when he saw that Claire had come to him. He asked them to follow him so they could find something they would like. While they walked through the shop, Kumi was surprised at how much there was. It seemed they sold literally everything here. Here he noticed several pocket watches that were missing the minute and second hands. Out of curiosity, he asked Claire about this, and it turned out the local residents did not know at all what seconds and minutes were. In this world, the clock hand reaches 14 and then starts over, meaning one day here lasts 28 hours. He began to wonder if their planet rotates more slowly, and if an hour here is counted differently than he was used to. In fact, in these two worlds, there might even be different understandings of what an hour is. But while he was thinking, someone approached him and asked if he had noticed anything interesting. He decided to buy a pocket watch and a desk clock and look around a little longer. Maybe there is something else interesting there. At the same time, he mentally reminded himself to buy only the essentials, not everything he might want. After a few minutes, Sebastian asked if he had found anything interesting for himself. He showed him several accessories that immediately caught his attention, and, in his opinion, would be perfect for Claire and Talara. He wanted to buy these gifts for them, but he simply did not have the money. He decided to keep this thought to himself for now. But Sebastian said that he could simply buy them with the reward he received for saving the girl, and was surprised when he found out that there was also a reward for that. In fact, Sebastian told him that he originally planned to buy what he wanted with that prize money. Kyumi did not know how to feel about this, since it was actually Leo who saved, and although he was grateful for that, he promised that he would definitely repay the debt someday. With that, the shopping was finally over, and they left the store, heading home. He said that they had already spent quite a lot of time in this city, and guessed that even now it would take them until sunset to return to the mansion. And then he suddenly remembered and asked, weren't they supposed to test his abilities in this city as well? Claire also forgot about that. Sebastian said that although it was already quite late, they could still go there if they wanted. And although Takumi was a little nervous, he still decided that they should try. Later, after walking down the main street and turning into an alley, they finally reached the desired place. It was a gray building with a black signboard on which a pentagram was painted in white paint. It looked quite creepy. They still went inside, and a woman came out to them from the depths of the building, saying that it was rude to make an elderly lady wait so long. Her name was Isabel, and she greeted everyone warmly. Sebastian apologized to her for being late and explained that they were delayed because of an adventure. She paid no attention to it, and like all the locals, was also very happy about Lady Claire's return. Takami was the only person she did not know there, and she decided that he was the one who wanted to have a man analysis done. At first he was a little confused, but then he remembered that Claire had already explained to him. Checking the amount of mana in a person also helps to better understand their gift. He introduced himself to her. She assured him that he did not need to be so shy around her, and then asked him to touch the crystal ball. He sat down and they began the procedure. As soon as he touched the crystal ball, light began to come out of it. Thanks to this, Isabel was able to determine his mana level. She told him that he had enough abilities. If he trained diligently, he could become a true master of magic. Regarding his abilities, she confirmed that he really had talent. And his gift was called herb growing. As the name suggests, it allowed him to grow weeds, herbs, and similar plants. Claire asked her if she could explain exactly how this gift works. And she replied that he can grow almost any plant, as long as it is not an agricultural crop. Claire wondered if medicinal herbs were also part of his abilities. Isabel said that it should also work if the plant he is trying to grow is in its natural environment. Claire told her that when they were looking for the cap in the forest, they could not find it anywhere, but as soon as he sat on the ground, he immediately found one. Jaispel asked if she was implying that it was his gift that helped find this herb, and she replied that she believed exactly that. But then Kyum admitted that there was one more thing he had not told her at that time. That day he wondered what kind of plant the hat could be, and right before his eyes, this plant seemed to grow out of the ground. This matched well with the analysis Isabel had made. She was very surprised to see what a special talent he had. Claire also said that he could dry the cap immediately as soon as he touched it. Isabel explained that this was also part of his gift. He could change the state of the plant as he needed. Remembering once again, Takumi realized that he had thought about how nice it would be if the plant dried up faster, and this confirmed that this was his ability. The skill to grow any plant, except vegetables, and have it ready at any moment. Takumi was not sure if this was really convenient or just a strange and not particularly useful skill. In any case, he thanked Isabel for helping him understand his special gift. Then she advised him on one thing, and said that the gift is a true value possessed by only a few. How to use it is up to him to decide. And whether he could fully realize his potential depended only on him, so before acting, it was worth thinking everything through carefully. He listened to her attentively, promising to remember this, and at the same time thought that he really should carefully consider how to make use of it. Later in the evening, they returned to the manor, and all the servants gladly greeted them after the journey. Layla informed that dinner was already ready, and they could sit at the table. Claire invited Kyumi and Leo to have dinner together when they finished unpacking their things in the room. When they put all the things back in his room, he felt tired. The day had been full of surprises in a completely new world for him. But then he looked at Leo and praised her for staying calm and not getting angry when everyone in the town tried to pet her. Thanks to this, now everyone understood that she was not scary at all. Moreover, she also did not let the thieves harm them, and he was very proud of her for that. With her by his side, he was ready to face whatever this new world would throw at him. At that very moment, Layla entered his room and said that everyone was already waiting for him and he went with her. Later, after they finished eating, he praised the cook named Helena for the delicious food, and she was pleased to hear it from him. After all, for cooks like her, the best praise was always words of gratitude for tasty food. She said goodbye and then called me, shouting, "Claire." He asked if she could also tell a little about herself, since he had recently shared his story with her. For a moment, she was completely confused and did not know what to answer. And then she began to blush, asking him what he meant and what she could possibly tell them. He noted that he still did not understand why she lived in such a large villa and why everyone in the town respected her. She sighed with relief, realizing that this was exactly what he meant, and agreed that it would be unfair if only he had an interesting story. She told him why she and her younger sister live in this village. The story is long, but in short, it was done to separate them from their father. He was quite gentle with them. However, almost every day their conversations kept returning again and again to the question of marriage. She still remembers how in one day she had to refuse 5 men, and it really annoyed her. And that's not all. He began insisting that Tilura also agree to marriage, even though she was only 10 years old. They could no longer endure it, so they decided to leave the main house. He realized that facing this almost every day was very exhausting, and hearing this from him made it even clearer. She exclaimed that that was exactly the case, and then everything just happened. She spoke about her father for half an hour, while the maids and Sebastian just stood nearby and smiled, as if they had heard this before. When she finished, she apologized to him for taking so much of his time. Then he asked why the townspeople respected her so much. He said that even the city guard immediately understood who she was. She explained that the reason was that the kingdom recognized the Liberta family as a rare dynasty of dukes. The current head of the family, her father, ruled over the entire surrounding territory, which included the city of Rakats. He was very surprised when he found out that she had already figured everything. Let's explain in more detail. From highest to lowest, the noble hierarchy looked like this. First came the duke, then the marquis, then the margrave, count, viscount, and at the very bottom was the baron. Above them was only the royal family, meaning in terms of importance they were immediately after the rulers. Takumi was simply amazed, and when he found out who she really was, he immediately apologized for his inattentiveness and for allowing himself to treat such a worthy lady too simply, but she stopped him right there and asked him to just talk to her the same way he had been doing all this time. She even assured him that he could behave with her even more simply, like with his younger sister. This really embarrassed him, so he asked Sebastian if everything was all right. And he simply replied that if the young Lee herself insists, then he has no reason to object. In fact, considering that his companion was a silver fennel, he claimed that his status was even higher than that of dukes, and this again surprised him greatly. Claire then asked him if he remembered what she told him on the day they met in the forest, about the royal coat of arms featuring a silver shield. The Libert family also had their own coat of arms, and she showed it to him. The coat of arms depicted a silver fender with sharp teeth and fangs. The silver fenneler and the royal family's coat of arms were in a calm position, symbolizing the kingdom's resilience. But on the Libert family's coat of arms, a silver fennel was depicted in a more warlike pose, symbolizing that they could defeat anyone if they wished. It is also known that in the past the Liber family had friendly relations with the silver fennel, and thanks to this they managed to win many wars. The kingdom noticed these achievements and granted their family noble status for this. That is why the Liber family has honored soldier farmers for many generations. Meanwhile, Takami looked at Leo, who was calmly resting with Talura, and could not imagine at all that she had once fought and won in war. Claire also said that because of this almost everyone knew about the silver fenmers and how fierce they were, and this also seemed quite logical to him. At that moment, Sebastian approached him and asked to talk alone. They stepped aside. He asked him if he had already prepared that thing, but at first he did not understand what it was about. But suddenly he understood what was being talked. He handed Claire and Tallery the gifts he had prepared for them. And a little nervously, he told them that he wanted to thank them for all their help, as they had supported him greatly. So with these gifts, he was thanking them. He offered them to accept it, and both were very surprised. Tillara opened her gift and saw a necklace with a pendant in the shape of a silvery fennec, which very much resembled Leo. She liked it very much, and she was incredibly happy. He showed Claire what he had brought her. It was a brooch in the shape of a flower, and she really liked its beauty. She thanked him for such a beautiful gift, and he rejoiced seeing that they both liked it. She quickly pinned this pin in her hair and asked how she looked. He told her that now she looked even more beautiful, and this made her embarrassed. Her whole face immediately blushed. Later, he was looking through a book that had a lot of interesting information about various medicinal herbs, and he decided to try to grow one of them. Returning to the events half an hour ago, he asked Claire if he could spend some time in the garden. She did not mind. But she was still curious whether he would play with Leo today, and he replied that he actually wanted to try his strength with the new gift and conduct a few experiments. He wanted to find out exactly which plants he could grow thanks to his talent with herbs, to choose the most useful ones for everyone. Since that was the case, she allowed him to use the garden, and he was delighted. Then he asked Sebastian if there were any books about medicinal plants in this estate. So returning to the present, he was reading about a low plant with thick, serrated leaves. Under the dense skin of these leaves was a jelly-like substance that had healing properties. Yet what impressed him the most was that, although this book was not written in Japanese, he could still read it. Then he began to think more about this low plant and realized that it was very similar to aloe vera. Since this plant also had a jelly-like liquid and sharp leaves, it became easier for him to imagine it when he understood which plant from his world it resembled. So he tried to use his gift and grow it from the ground. He activated his herb-growing technique, and suddenly everything changed. A bright light flashed under his hand, and right before everyone's eyes, the plant grew. Everyone was amazed at what they saw. And they could not believe that out of all the plants, the smallest one grew for him. Infused, Takumi asked them if there was any problem with that, and Sebastian asked him if he even understood what he decided to grow. He replied that he had just seen this plant in the book he was given and noticed that it resembled the one growing at his home. Since that was the case, Sebastian told him that Lo is a medicinal plant that helps heal wounds. If you apply some of the jelly inside, wounds can heal well. And all this only made Kaim realize that he really found himself in his gloomy double. They sat in the garden, and Sebastian added that the low jelly-like creature can instantly heal injuries, which surprised him greatly. Of course, it cannot handle serious injuries, but such power could completely heal a deep cut to the bone without leaving a trace. Therefore, Takumi rejected his first thought and realized that everything was not at all as he initially imagined. Sebastian noted that it is still unclear where this plant originates from, and it has never been seen growing in clusters. Because of this, it is considered very rare, so it can be worth a lot of money on the market. He already thought that any medicinal herb he grew would definitely be useful to them, but he could not even imagine that on the very first try he would be able to grow. Idols were asked how much they earn and how much their popularity costs, and he replied that since the plant he grew had more than 10 leaves, after selling it, he could easily buy a whole house. And this simply shocked him. He thought about whether to open a store and sell such things. And Claire believed that with his talent, he would quickly open his own store and be able to sell a wide variety of plants. But the question was whether he really wanted to open a store specializing in medicinal herbs. He admitted that he was not quite sure about that yet. Right now, he just wanted to find a way to earn money himself because he felt uncomfortable just living at the expense of others. Sebastian suggested not to focus only on growing low-growing plants, because if their quantity increased so much, it could create supply problems. Their market value would definitely drop significantly, and Claire agreed with that. So she asked to kill me if he allowed them to stay in the villa for now, and he did not mind. Besides, she assured him that if he ever decided to become a merchant of medicinal herbs, she would definitely help him. The Liberty family can help him organize all affairs. He asked if she meant that the Duke's people would sell and advertise his goods, and she replied that yes. To inform him that the Lieber family is engaged in various businesses, both in their own country, and the taxes they collected, as local rulers, went only to maintaining the estate and the army in case of emergencies. Fortunately, her family had been successfully engaged in business for many generations, so they were able to preserve their wealth thanks to the profits. She advised him to simply entrust the trade matters to the Lieber family. Therefore, potential buyers did not doubt the quality and authenticity of his goods, since they were sold by a shop connected to her family. Of course, if he wanted to open and manage the store himself, she would not interfere. But if he agreed to work with them, she promised that he would be fairly rewarded. At the same time, she understood why he might want to have his own business and gain not only income, but also more influence over decisions. So it was his choice in the end. Takumi replied that actually it was not like that. He had never dreamed of owning a business. Therefore, this idea did not particularly excite him. So he decided to seek help from her and her family, since he himself was not very knowledgeable about business. She was glad to hear this news, but for now it was just a verbal agreement between them. To finalize this, she needed to talk to her father and get his permission. She was sure he would immediately refuse. However, she would have to talk again about a possible marriage, and this made her very nervous. But then an idea occurred to her. She decided to negotiate all the contract details with Takumi herself, and only then meet with her father. Meanwhile, she could figure out how to gently refuse her father's demands. Later, he reviewed the book one more time again and tried once more to grow herbs. His entire garden was already turning into a real field. However, there was one thing that surprised him greatly. He noticed that someone was growing leaves of a plant he had never seen before, and even in the book he was reading, there was no mention of such a plant. This puzzled him considerably. He realized that he could only grow what he imagined in his mind. He remembered how Lev and Talara ran around the garden, and he thought it would be very difficult for him to join them, and perhaps because of this thought, he imagined something that could take away the fatigue. He still did not understand what this leaf was for, so he decided to set it aside and think about it after lunch, since it was now time to eat. Leah, as always, enjoyed her food and ate so deliciously that she got all dirty. He told her that after she finished, a bath awaited her. She did not want to, started barking, and he insisted that the stains around her mouth could not be wiped off with a napkin. He thanked Claire for the delicious dinner and invited Leo to go with him to take a bath. And she just laughed, watching how these two awkwardly waved. Finally, he managed to lead her to the bathroom and saw that she was upset. He told her to get used to it, because now they would bathe regularly so that she would always be clean. He began to wash her fur, and she did not like it at all, but she still endured and listened to him. When he was cleaning it, he was surprised at how dirty it had become. But if you think about it, it really was logical. She had been running in the forest for a long time, and since then she hadn't had a chance to wash properly. Then he also wiped her face. She had meat gravy on her, and she was told to eat more carefully next time. When he finished, he asked Layla to help Leo get home, and she agreed. Finally, he was alone and could calmly enjoy the bath, relaxing in the huge tub. Everyone thought that although bathing Leo is now much more difficult because she has become so big, it is still fun. Then he joined everyone and thanked them for letting him use the bathroom. Claire praised him, saying that he did well, and now Leo looks really fresh. Tilura really liked that her fur became so fluffy, and he was simply delighted to see it. Claire noticed that the silver fur now shines even brighter. And only by looking at it, she understood why silver wings never obey anyone. She asked Tommy if he remembered the forest where they first met, and told him about it. According to legend, long ago the first head of the family passed through this very forest. He asked if this was the same leader who was said to be on friendly terms with the Silver Fenrir, and she confirmed that it was indeed him. So she asked him once again to go with her deep into that forest. Everyone in the room was simply shocked when they heard this from her. She added that the first head also met the Silver Fennel in the same forest. Kumi asked her if she knew how the first head managed to befriend the Silver Fennel. However, she herself did not know, and why it happened remains a mystery to this day. In the Albert family stories, nothing was mentioned about this, and in the documents describing half the life of the first head of the family, such details were also absent. But there was a record explaining how this head ended up among the wings in that forest. And at that very moment, the Silver Fenrir appeared before them. It was because of that incident that this forest was named Fenrir's. Takumi was a bit confused and asked her if Fenrirari was the same as Silder Fenrirari. She explained to him that there were many differences between them. From what she had heard, ordinary Fendars were usually smaller and not as fast as Lee. But that did not change the fact that they were still significantly faster than humans, and they could also control fire and ice, which made them very dangerous. And although their fangs and claws were not as sharp as those of the Silver Fenrir, an ordinary person or someone similar definitely would not withstand such an attack. To give me a hint, he asked if there were any hideouts in that forest with those protective bumpers. She replied that since the death of the first leader, no one had seen any Fenrir, let alone a soldier like this one. He began to think about everything that had happened to him, how he suddenly found himself in Fenrir's forest, and how Levko, a cute little dog, turned into the silver Fenrir. And in that same forest, a person who shared a blue bond with Claire also befriended the silvery Fenhull. It seemed to him as if fate itself had brought everything, but she also added that it was precisely because of this that people both feared and respected the forest, and did not even dare to venture into its. He asked her if she meant that if you look more carefully, you can find even more wings or even silver wings. And she gladly told him that this was exactly what she was thinking about. But then Sebastian shouted and interrupted them. He apologized in advance for speaking at the wrong time. But even together with Takumi and Leo, he thought that exploring the depths of the Fenrir forest was still too dangerous. The maids agreed with him and said that if Fenrirs really lived there, then returning from there unharmed would definitely not be possible. Everyone asked her to think again and not go there. She understood what they were trying to say, but asked them to be quiet because she wanted to hear Kumi's opinion, not theirs. They apologized to her while she was returning to him. And again she asked if he would go with her to the forest. He really did not know what to answer, and from her appearance it was clear that she would do it anyway, with him or without him. So he asked her if he could first consult with Leo, and she agreed. Then he called Leo and took her aside. He told her everything, how Claire asked them to go with her to the forest, and asked what she thought about it. Judging by how she barked, it seemed to him that she was kind of saying, why not? He was worried about her, since they could run into a pack of fenders in the dense forest, and who knows what that could lead to. It could even be a silvery Fenrir, like her, but it seemed she was not scared at all. Then he noticed that even if the ordinary defenders were too weak for her, what would they do if suddenly a silvery one appeared before them? She was confident that they themselves would not attack. On the contrary, they might even accept them as friends. Then he added that there could be a whole pack of these creatures, and other monsters also needed to be considered, and she reacted to this with a loud bark. She told him that she could easily handle them all, since the other monsters were even weaker than these defenders. This really surprised him. At first, Versalio felt good among the silver Fenrirs and the ordinary ones, but suddenly he understood something. He looked at her and was amazed at how he could understand so well everything she said. She herself looked confused. Since he never got an explanation, he decided not to think about it for now, and was glad that she so confidently wanted to go with them to the forest. After this, he returned to Claire and said that they would gladly go with her to the forest, and this pleased her. And Sebastian and the maids, on the contrary, were simply shocked. He even called Goric and asked them if it was not because they so strongly did not want Claire to go to that forest, because they were afraid, and Sebastian admitted that this was exactly. He just wanted the mistress of this house to be safe, and for nothing to threaten her. And Kimi assured him that everything would be safe in the forest if they stayed close to Leo. Sebastian asked him if he was sure about that. He replied that yes, because he had already discussed it with her, and she herself had said so. But suddenly Layla interrupted him and asked if he really understood what Leia had said. He explained that it was not quite like that. It was just that they had lived together for so long that he could understand what she meant without words. And all three of them just stood there confused, not knowing what to think. Leo began to bark as if she wanted to say something to everyone, but none of them could understand what she meant. So Takumi translated this for them and explained that, in her opinion, ordinary Fenrirers subconsciously obey the silver Fenrirers, and even if they accidentally attacked her, she could easily handle them regardless of their number. And as for the silvery creatures, there was no point in worrying because they did not attack their own, so Claire set off for the forest with excitement, and Sebastian, though hesitant, no longer argued. She decided to start preparing for tomorrow so that they could set off the next day. Then Takumi asked her why she was so interested at all in whether there were silver wings in that forest. She dodged this question and told him they would talk about it another time. Their conversation had already dragged on, and Talura also began nodding. But before leaving, she promised to tell everything in the forest because she did not want anyone else to find out about it, not even Sebastian. Later, when he returned to his room with Leo, he still could not believe that they would really go into that forest again. He still clearly remembered how they got stuck in that forest and met the orcs. To be honest, he really did not want to go back. But since Claire really wanted to check it, he did not mind. It seemed really important to her. Besides, something was bothering him about this forest too. At that moment, Leo began sniffing a strange leaf. which he grew thanks to growing herbs. He was also seeing such leaves for the first time because no one had explained to him before what they looked like. He even thought about looking for this information in a book again. But suddenly Leo ate the entire leaf. He was scared because he did not know how exactly that leaf could affect her. However, Leo started joking with him as she saw how brightly he was smiling. And he saw that her tail did not stop wagging, and she herself suddenly became very energetic. He asked her how she felt after eating that leaf. She told him that all her fatigue disappeared, she felt much better, and even had more strength. Hearing this, he thought that maybe he had just grown some madness without realizing it. Finally, the day of their journey came, and when he went downstairs, he saw that Layla and Sebastian had also already gathered to go to the... Confused, he asked them if they were also going with him to Claire. Sebastian confirmed that they were, because although he trusted both himself and Leo, he still believed that together. Claire got angry and was already tired of him treating her like a little child. Meanwhile, Takumi was calming her down, explaining that they only wanted the best for her. Tillera also came to say goodbye to them and wished them a safe journey. Everyone got into the carriage and was already ready to set off. Altakum felt a bit uncomfortable because he was squeezed between two women. He was embarrassed to ask them to leave a place for him. And Sebastian just laughed, watched from the side, and said that youth is always like that. They had already left the mansion and were walking further when he asked him. In the past, Sebastian said that the road there would take about 3 hours. Claire asked if there was any problem, and he replied that nothing serious, he just had never traveled long in a carriage, and because of that he was a bit nervous. She was curious to find out how people move in his world. He explained everything very simply. It is a metal box that can move by itself. This surprised her very much, and she began to ask him how it could move on its own without a horse. Even when he said that there was no magic in his world, Layla and Sebastian were still very interested. So he explained to them that these engines run on liquid fuel. The fuel was burned to obtain energy that could move the box from its place. And if someone wondered how a metal container could move, even though it was heavy, he himself did not know the exact answer. Only specialists could explain this. But he assured them that everything works perfectly. Claire was very surprised when she heard about this, and he told her that they had no special choice, so they had to invent new technologies because they did not have magic. Later, they finally reached the forest and got off the horses because it was no longer possible to ride them further. Sebastian tied them to a tree, and Kume wondered what would happen to the horses while they went far into the forest. And one guard took responsibility for watching them until everyone returned from the expedition. Then Layla asked him to help several guards gather branches so that she could prepare lunch. He agreed and together with Leo moved on. He gathered several branches to start a fire, but suddenly she said something to him. He informs Bastian that it was Leah who wanted to light the fire first, and he did not object at all. Moreover, he even wanted to see the magic of the silver Fenrir. Claire was also very happy because she finally saw how the silver Fenrir cast a spell. Everyone stepped back, and then Leo released fire directly from her mouth, which simply shocked everyone. She lit the fire, and Claire simply could not believe her eyes when she saw how the silvery fennel created a real miracle right before her. After that, Layla started preparing lunch for them, and asked everyone to wait a little. After they finished eating, Takumi praised Layla for the delicious dinner. She appreciated it, and Claire suggested moving on. But Sebastian called him and asked him to take a sword with him. It was his first time holding a real sword in his hands. Sebastian said that it was better to keep this thing with him just in case, because it was unknown what they might encounter in the fortress. He thanked him for that. But then, for some reason, Leo began sniffing in his own way and wondered what was on her mind right now. However, when everyone was ready to set off, they decided to keep going until they found the river. Tumi asked them if they planned to use the river as a landmark before going further, and they confirmed that this was exactly what they intended to do. On the way, he noticed that Leo was also in a good mood, humming along and cheerfully singing. And he simply enjoyed seeing that. Then, as they walked through the forest, Sebastian heard the sound of a stream. This meant that they were getting closer to the river. And Claire was already completely exhausted, and one of the guards was helping her walk straight, reassuring her that they would soon take a break. At that moment, Leo heard something. She began to grow, looking sideways into the forest. He did not understand what she was doing. But suddenly he noticed something too. He immediately warned Sebastian that they needed to be alert. It seemed that orcs had appeared here. Guards Philip, Johanna, Nicola. The warriors quickly formed ranks and promised themselves they would not let a single monster near their lady, not while they stood guard. Takumi also drew his sword, deciding that it was time for him to. But when the orcs finally appeared, it turned out there were 3 of them, which surprised everyone greatly. The orcs are rushing straight at them. But even before they could do anything, Leo pounced on them and dealt with all 3 alone in a moment. Everyone was amazed when they saw how she defeated 3 orcs at once in just a moment, who attacked together. Approach her and ask if she is all right. She just sat down and smiled at him as if nothing had happened. He was very proud of her and praised her for the excellently done job. The guards were confused and did not know what to say. And they felt that in that fight they were no better than straw scarecrows, just standing aside and watching while she did all the work for them. And Sebastian also realized that the silver wings were much stronger than he had thought. Claire approached Takumi and asked if Lee had said anything to him. He understood what she meant. Orcs were just a treat for her. This surprised them even more. Claire also said that even experienced warriors consider orcs a serious threat. Takumi noticed that the guards already did not believe their own eyes, so he decided not to add fuel to the fire and changed the subject, suggesting everyone move on to the river. He asked Leo to take the whole orcs so they could still somehow use them, and she had already started the task, lifting an orc with her mouth. And all the others already understood that she could really be relied upon. Since she was doing this, the guards volunteered to pick up the severed limbs themselves and immediately lifted all of it. He saw that it was a bit difficult for them, and they could quickly get tired if they kept holding it constantly. But at that very moment, an idea came to his mind. He asked all 3 to wait a little because he wanted to give them some. He took some herb out of the bag. Although he noticed that it looked strange, he still wanted them to try it because he believed it would help them carry the orcs' limbs more easily. They listened to him, tried the herbs, and were surprised that the taste was not as bad as it looked. Takumi was glad when he saw that they liked the taste of the drink. Suddenly, they felt that their bodies became lighter, and even the orichicha they were carrying became completely weightless. This gave them even more motivation. Claire asked excitedly what exactly he had fed them, and he explained that it was just the result of his experiments with growing herbs. In fact, this offense arose simply due to a coincidence, and she still had many questions for him about it. But he told her that they would talk about it later. Now they needed to find that river. She was a little upset but agreed that he was right. Finally, after a long search, they found the river, and Claire was very happy. Eventually they sighed with relief upon seeing this. Now they could rest a little, and Lee immediately rushed forward. She bathed in the river and got real pleasure just swimming in the water. Claire finally sat down to rest, and the others began gathering things for the camp. After a few minutes, he approached her and said they had found a good place for the camp. He asked her if she felt well because she looked very tired, although she said she could still walk. He noticed that today she had tried very hard, and they decided to stop for a day and set up camp by the river. Meanwhile, Sebastian helped her rest, and the guards began setting up tents. Layla was preparing the orcs for cooking, and Tsuihou offered her help. But again Leo approached him and said she wanted to cut the meat herself. Later, night had already come, and he and Leo sat by the campfire alone. And he wondered if everything was really okay with Claire. Let's go back a bit to when they had just eaten. Sebastian volunteered to stand guard at night himself, because in this forest monsters could attack them at any moment. And then Kume remembered that he hadn't thought about it at all, because in his own world, he never had to worry about such things. Then they decided who would stand guard, and in what order that night. Philip took the first watch. Nicola and Layla took the next, and then Sebastian and Johanna. Then Kume stopped him and asked when his shift was, and you replied that he didn't need to worry about it. Moreover, he had never done anything like this. However, he insisted that he also wanted to participate in the night watch. He admitted that he was not used to it, but Leo was beside him. So if he assured him, it was safe to entrust it to the 2 of them. Thus, Sebastian listened to everyone and decided he and Leo would take the first watch, and then everyone would stand in turn, as he had previously arranged. He also informed them that the watch would begin at 10 o'clock, and each shift would last 3 hours. Takumi looked at his pocket watch, which showed 14 o'clock, and realized that it was now 3 hours past 10, and his shift would end at 13. It was roughly like from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. in his world. But then Claire turned to Sebastian and said that she also wanted to get a watch for herself. He asked her simply to get a good night's sleep and rest properly because she was already very tired after the trip. And if tomorrow she still felt tired, they would have no choice but to take her home. She was silent. Takumi immediately saw from her face that she did not like resting while others were working, but unpleasant as it was, she still needed to rest because she was completely exhausted. So, returning his thoughts to the present, sitting by the fire, he wondered if he could somehow help her. At that moment, he heard something coming out of the tent and looked at the watch. He still had a whole hour left. It turned out to be Claire. She approached him and thanked him and Leo for watching over security at night. He was a little surprised to see her and asked if it was hard for her to rest. And she replied that it was not quite so. She sat down next to both of them, and from her smile he immediately understood she had something on her. Eventually she confessed to him that she had long wanted to discuss one important thing with him. At first she thanked him for bringing her to this forest, and he assured her that it was not necessary, since he also wanted to return here. But still she wanted to sincerely thank him, because it was thanks to him that they reached this moment. He was a little surprised when he heard this, so he asked if there was anything else she wanted to talk about. At first she was a little shy, but still admitted that it was about the time when she asked him to go with her to the forest. After that, Sebastian really scolded her. He said that Takumi agreed to go with her simply because she asked him. They had just met, but she asked him in such a way that it was almost impossible to refuse, even if it could threaten his life. Because of this, she felt very ashamed and apologized for putting him in such a dangerous situation. However, he assured her that it was not that important and agreed to help. He was not the type to refuse if someone asked for help, and he himself was curious to see the forest, so in the end everything worked out well. However, she could not get rid of the thought that she had actually imposed this on him. As a member of the Duke's family, she believed that it was not right to do so. He asked her if there was any special reason why. She explained that dukes are the highest noble persons, and few could contradict them. Therefore, they were strictly forbidden to give orders without a valid reason. Even understanding this, she still effectively forced him to go with her, and by this very act disgraced her family. Therefore, she could not even imagine how to forgive herself for what she had done. He looked at her and simply called Leo. She quickly pressed her face to Claire's knees, which greatly surprised her. He asked her to just pet Leo until he felt better, and she began to do it. It really made her smile. And he was simply glad that she was smiling again. Regarding her feelings, he once again assured that it was not difficult for him at all to come. In fact, she didn't even ask him to do it then. He thought that when such a beautiful girl asks him for a favor, it is quite nice. When she heard this, she felt very embarrassed and blushed. But still she asked again if he was really not against it. He said that if she really felt so bad about all this, then instead of apologies she could simply tell why she had to go to the forest, and after that, they could consider that no one owed anyone anything. She laughed and agreed to tell him the whole truth. She admitted that she was actually not interested in this forest at all. In fact, she was interested specifically in the silvery fennel, the one who truly belonged to these lands and was not a stranger from his cold world. As for her desire to find such a person, it was largely connected with her acquaintance with Leo. When she was born, rumors spread among the servants in the house. Everyone believes that she might be the reincarnation of the first head of the Liber family. The reason they believed so much was that it was all because of the portraits of the first master, which hung all over. Her entire life was depicted in the paintings, and among them was one painted immediately after her birth, in which she looked exactly like herself, like 2 drops of water. This means that the first head was also a woman, and she was very brave. On the battlefield, she easily defeated the enemies. Mikaeu was genuinely surprised to learn that the first leader was a woman. She also said that over time she herself began to resemble her more and more. The servants were convinced that she was her reincarnation and expected that she would bring luck and prosperity to the Liberty family. He asked her what her father thought about this, and she replied that her father did not believe in it at all. He told her not to believe all this either, and that she did not need to behave like the first leader. He wanted her to live as her own heart guided her. Takumi was delighted to learn that she had such a wonderful dad. She also agreed, for it was thanks to him that she was able to grow into who she is. But she herself did not know why it happened that way. But the whole point is that as soon as she hears something about the silver fenmers, her heart starts beating fast. She feels strange emotions rising inside and wants to understand what they really mean. She thought the only way out was to go further into the forest, to the place where, according to rumors, silver fennel was first found. He noted that there is no guarantee that there are any silvery wings there at all, and she agreed with that. But still, she wanted at least to try to find them. In the worst case, they find nothing and that's it. He asked if she would just give up if they couldn't find them now. She said that this was all she could do, because just by entering this forest, she had already caused many people trouble. Moreover, she no longer saw the point in searching for those silvery. So if during this search they find nothing, she has already decided for herself. She will take it as a sign and just move on. She gave in to the rumors going around, and that is why she could not tell Sebastian and the others about all this. He simply felt sorry for her, and she quickly apologized for telling so much, but he assured her there was no need to apologize and even said he was glad to find out what was on her mind. She thanked him for being so kind to her. He also asked him not to tell anyone else about it. He promised he would not tell anyone, and Leo also confirmed his words. After some time, Philip went out onto the street. Finally, it was his turn to stand guard. He asked both to rest a little this night, especially Claire. Because if she had not done this, Sebastian would have expressed everything he thinks in the morning, and she laughed, admitting that he was right about it. When she was about to leave, Philip stopped her and said it was not worth worrying too much about the past, because he and Sebastian helped precisely because she is who she is. She asked him if he had really eavesdropped on their conversation, and he pretended not to understand what it was about at all, and Takumi was just wondering if he had said something strange. Be that as it may, both decided to return to the tent, and Philip wished them good night. And suddenly Takumi found something interesting in his bag. He quickly ran up to Claire, gave her some herbs, and asked her to try eating them before resting. These were special means for rest that he grew thanks to his cultivation skills. Thanks to them, she will be able to sleep well and wake up refreshed in the morning. She really wanted to learn more about his research, and he promised to tell her everything whenever she wanted, because he had nothing to hide from her. After that, both returned to their tents. When he was about to rest, Sebastian approached and thanked him for standing guard. This really surprised him. He had not slept all this time. He asked if he had heard everything, and of course, he had listened to everything, but he had no idea that these rumors troubled her so much. He thanked Kumi for listening to him and allowing him to share his experiences. He was sure that she already felt better after talking with him and with Kumi. Kumi hoped the same. At this, both went to rest. The next morning, the time finally came to start their search. And now, when everyone had rested, they were ready to move on. To continue the search, Leo, Claire, Sebastian, and Takumi decided to go along the river first, while Philip and Nicola decided to stay near the camp. Layla and Johanna remained to guard the fire. When they went deeper, the energy became very dense, and it was quite dark inside. Sebastian asked Claire if she was okay, and she replied that she was not tired at all, unlike the previous time. She thanked Akumi for his herbs, as it was thanks to them that she felt energetic, and he was simply glad that they worked. Returning to the search, they could barely distinguish where to step due to the complete darkness. Although Sebastian wanted to save his mana, he had no choice now, so he used light magic to defeat him. Create a small light orb and illuminate everything around with it. Takami was very surprised by what he saw, and Sebastian said that it was actually quite simple. If he practiced a little, he could do the same. He asked Sebastian if he could teach him some magic when they returned to the manor, and Sebastian did not object at all. But suddenly Claire shouted from behind, if he wants to learn magic, she can also show him a few magical tricks. And they both just looked at her. Sebastian reminded that he was the one who taught her the basics, so he was better suited for this task, and she argued that she had also learned a lot and could teach him how to use magic as well. He said nothing more and decided to entrust her care to Kume. Having said, they searched a little more for the silvery fennel, but that day they found nothing. And so a few more days passed, and nothing changed. On the evening of the third day, everyone gathered around the campfire and began discussing that 3 days had already passed since the start of the search, and just as long since they entered the forest, but they still found nothing. They began to suspect that perhaps there really were no furters in this forest. Since everything was exactly like that, Claire informed everyone that if nothing was found tomorrow either, it would be time to stop the search and return to the estate. Everyone was very surprised when they heard this and asked if she was really sure. She calmly replied that everyone had already done too much for her, just to satisfy her own desires. The more they got tired in this forest, the more dangerous their search became, so it was better to stop it than to expose themselves to danger. Everyone already knew what she had talked about with Takami a few nights ago, and just wanted to help her calm. That is how much they loved her, but they also understood exactly what she wanted to say, so none of them added anything more. The next morning, while they were searching in the forest, Takumi was already tired and turned to Leo with a question about what they should do next. If things continued like this, they would have to return home empty-handed, and he did not want that. He wanted to help Claire. But at that very moment, Leo took his hand and said something that gave him an idea. He remembered his talent for growing herbs. And that is why he was confident that he could help everyone. He returned to the others and said that all this time, he had forgotten one very important thing. Thanks to his knowledge of herb cultivation, he could help them relieve fatigue. This would greatly ease their search. Philip asked him if he meant that there really was some herb that could help them in their search. And he, on the contrary, was only now apologizing to them for not having thought about it earlier, although there was almost no time left. He thanked Leo for reminding him about it, but setting all that aside, he decided to check if his research had really yielded results. He concentrated, activated his herb-growing skill, and the entire area transformed into a field where various herbs began to grow. Philip was simply amazed as he saw for the first time how his gift worked. While he was handing it to them and asking them to taste, as soon as they did, they immediately felt invigorated, so much so that they could even go train now. Takumi was glad that everything worked out and asked them to try other options as well. But before eating them, he asked Sebastian to turn off his light. Embarrassed, Sebastian reminded him that then they wouldn't be able to see anything around, but he reassured him they wouldn't even need it. He gave them all the herbs, and as soon as they ate, Claire feels that something inside her is changing, and suddenly she began to see the true meaning of the words. To their surprise, the herds made the scene around much more pleasant for them. Now they no longer needed light, and they could even preserve their mana. But that was not all. Now she also heard various sounds better. And he explained to them that this happened because of the second. He gave them 2 different herbs. One herb improved vision, so a person could clearly see around even in low light, and the other enhanced hearing and helped better navigate the surroundings. So if there was a bumper nearby, they would immediately find it. Now that their senses had become sharper, she felt that today they might find what she had been searching for so long. They continued the search but still found nothing. Later, Sebastian told her that the sun would soon set, and she began to lose hope. Suddenly they heard a loud roar. The lion also started barking, and she told Takumi that some monsters were fighting ahead. Moreover, there was one more thing that surprised him greatly. He quickly called Claire and informed her that they had finally found Fenrir. Sebastian and Philip asked him if he was sure about it, since they had not felt anything yet. He replied that Leo had always had sharp senses. Moreover, the herbs she had taken earlier also helped her. But at the same time, he still could not believe that there really was a Fender nearby. But according to Leo, someone had attacked Fenrir. He asked them if they could imagine what kind of creature could have attacked Fenrir in this forest. They guessed it might be trolls. Trolls were giants over 3 meters tall, and although they were considered weaker than Fenrir, if gathered in large numbers, the situation could change drastically. Leo confirmed that they were indeed trolls, and it seemed there were about. Everyone did not know what to do next, until suddenly Claire shouted that they had to go save that Fender. Sebastian reminded her that they would not be able to handle 5 trolls on their own, and she herself had no plan. But then Leo barked, as if challenging her to a fight, and she was ready to enter this clash. Claire clenched her fist and bowing, asked her to take care of it. She agreed, and Kume ordered her to go quickly ahead of them. While everyone was running after her, he was simply proud of Leo, because she did not want to abandon a comrade from Fenrir. They finally reached her, and it turned out that Leo had already dealt with all the trolls. And only their bodies remained in place, but Leo looked upset and asked her where the Fender had gone. She showed them a small fennel that had been attacked, and everyone was shocked to see it on the ground. Everything was covered in blood. The little one was badly hurt, and none of them knew what to do now. Sebastian went to see what had happened there, and when Claire asked how things were, he replied. He told them they were a bit late coming here. Judging by his condition, he thought there was very little time left. Hearing this, she was upset, because after so many attempts they had finally managed to find the fender, and meanwhile Leo said something to Takumi. She really wanted to save the baby's life, but did not understand how to do it. Claire asked Sebastian if there was any way to save his life, but he was not sure about it. Moreover, even if there was some way, he was not a doctor. Takumi remembered that he once told him, Lo can instantly heal wounds, and he became curious whether this ability could be used. But he replied that these wounds were beyond the ability of even the best doctors to heal. After that, he stepped aside. Inspired by Lo, he remembered if there was a herb that could instantly heal a deadly wound. He used his skills in growing herbs, and a new plant appeared before them. He cut off a piece and felt that it might work. He placed this herb directly on the guard's wounds, and suddenly it began to glow brightly. This light was absorbed into his body, it began to breathe, and Sebastian was simply amazed. He informed everyone that the creature's breathing had stabilized and the wounds had completely healed. The little wing had fully recovered. Takumi rejoiced upon hearing this, and Claire and Leo immediately rushed to him, thanking him for the rescue. And Sebastian still could not recover from the news that there is a power capable of instantly healing even deadly wounds. Takumi just laughed and said that he was simply lucky because he himself was not sure it would work, but in the end, he was glad he could save a life. Sebastian quickly covered it with a blanket so it would not get cold, as it had not yet regained strength. Judging by the size, he decided that it was most likely a puppy. The wolf accidentally fell behind his pack and was attacked by a troll. When his condition normalized, he suggested returning back. Claire wondered what would happen to it now. Lee also tried to say something, and Kumi felt sorry that she felt that way. He told everyone that Lee wants to take little Fenrir with her, and Claire also wishes that. They shouted that it really needs to be returned. Sebastian tried to persuade her, explaining that Fendars are very dangerous creatures, but she stubbornly insisted, if they leave him here, he will be attacked again. He did not deny that this could really have happened. Also, everyone, including Takumi, agreed that they should take it with them. He asked him if he still remembered what he and Leo talked about before they came to this forest. And he recalled how they said that even if someone attacks them, with Leo nearby, they have nothing to fear. Takumi added that she also said, Fenmers always obey the elder Fenmers, and hearing all this, Sebastian finally agreed to take it back so they could watch over it. This pleased Claire very much, and she thanked him. But he made it clear, if this creature threatens the estate residents even a little, they will immediately treat it as an enemy and destroy it like any other monster. He also wanted Leo to watch everything carefully, and these were his conditions. Everyone agreed, so they decided to return to the camp. Claire was simply delighted that they finally managed to get results from this expedition. And now it became clear, the Fendars really live in this forest. That was quite enough for her, so she took the puppy into her arms. She asked Leo if he minded her carrying the lantern, and he did not object at all. Walter Kayum was surprised that Leo was so worried about Fenmer, but then thought that she probably sympathized with him because of her own past experience. Later in the evening, they returned to the camp, and Layla and Nicola were impressed when they saw what they had brought with them. Claire introduced them to the baby Fenderer and told them that they had saved him when trolls attacked him in the forest, which greatly impressed both of them. Fenra finally woke up, and the first thing she saw was Leo, who was intently looking at her face, which frightened her very much. It really began to tremble and turned away from him. But then Claire calmed him down and assured him that Lei did not intend to harm them. She slowly put it down, and they began to talk among themselves. Later, while the girls were preparing food, they still couldn't believe that they would really bring home a Fenrir, even though it was small. Then they fed it. And it immediately began to eat everything, not wasting a single second. Kumis finally sat down under the tree and rested a little, recalling how many unusual things had happened to him. First, Lev turned into a silvery Fenmer, then his talent for growing herbs appeared, and now a Fenmer puppy had appeared. Since he had just appeared in this world, he hoped he could rest a little, but looking at all this, he began to understand. A peaceful life was not in store for him yet. The next day, they all set off together and were almost out of the forest. The guard was already waiting for them with the horses and was glad to see that everyone had returned safe and sound. They had been returning for a long time, so he asked if something, and Sebastian explained that actually it was the opposite. Since they were returning empty-handed, they decided to continue the search. He also introduced him to little Fenra. They took him under their protection in the forest and assured him that he had nothing to worry about because it was not dangerous at all. The guard reacted calmly. He didn't ask anything else. They were already about to get into the carriage, but then Kume remembered how cramped that cart was and how last time he ended up squeezed between Layla and Claire. Moreover, they now had a puppy with them, so he suggested that the two of them just take the coach and he would return riding Leo himself. But suddenly, the little one jumped into his arms. It seemed that they really wanted him to go with them too. Since that was how it turned out, he sat opposite her and gestured for her to sit. She looked at Takumi and asked if she could ride on Leo. And that didn't bother him at all, because Leo herself was okay with it. After that, they left the forest and headed back to the manor, in the carriage. It seemed that the femur was enjoying itself and fit so comfortably in the small space, as if showing the guests that it really liked tight places. If you think about it, he remembered that Leo also loved to rest curled up between the legs of the sofa. In this regard, they were really very similar to each other. They finally returned to the estate and were just about to enter through the gate. Suddenly, Leo began to look thoughtfully into the distance, and then she howled loudly, which greatly surprised everyone present. The baby did the same, and they both started howling together. When they stopped, Claire began to wonder what exactly they were doing. Sebastian was simply amazed when he first heard the howl of the silver femur and immediately felt that something very bad had happened. But it seems everything was quite the opposite. Takumi remembered what was said. Femurs communicate with each other. He assumed that maybe these two were talking right now. Claire became interested in what they were talking about, so she simply asked Leo what was happening. She told him that she now considered the territory around the estate hers, and if any of the other fenders wanted to join her pack, she would gladly accept them. Then he asked her what the little one had told her, and she replied that she agreed to join and was even happy about this meeting. He told all this to Claire. She also recalled that the fender has a strong sense of community, so she assumed that maybe this was some special ritual for it. But then she noticed that it had already fallen on her buttocks, and she rejoiced that now she and Leo had already become friends. They entered the estate, where, as usual, all the servants stood in a row and greeted them on their return home. And no matter how many times this happened, each such moment was something. Claire thanked everyone for the warm welcome, but also asked them to speak more quietly. Otherwise, the little brat would wake up, so they quickly apologized. At that moment, T-Lyra also ran up to them, and she warmly greeted them as well. She noticed the creature that her sister was carrying and asked what it was. She told her that it was a fender puppy, and when she heard that, her eyes lit up with joy. And she really liked how cute that baby was. But Claire also asked her to be quiet, since Fenra had just recovered from a serious wound, so she still needed some peace. She quickly apologized, but Kume immediately calmed her down and said there was nothing to worry about. After all, now everything is much better, and very soon Claire decided to put it in place so that it could rest well. At that time, Zelda asked if he needed anything. At first, he wanted to change himself, and only then act first. He asked her to prepare tea for him because he was soon going down to the living room. Then, refreshed, he returned downstairs, and Zelda was already waiting for him with a cup. He praised her for the tasty tea, and she appreciated it. Then Claire, together with Talara and the little puppy, also approached him, and she was the first to thank him for everything he had done for them during the search in the forest. He also thanked her for everything she had done, and meanwhile Talara was just playing with two wings. Kimmy was surprised that the baby woke up so quickly and said that he actually woke up right after she returned to her room. Then she remembered something and started laughing, so he asked what happened. She explained to him that when they entered the estate, it was still rest time, so after waking up it got confused because it found itself inside the house. And after waking up, it began to look around carefully, trying to figure out where it was now. She found this scene funny because it looked very cute. Putting that aside for now, she turned her attention to his herb growing and asked if he would like to share with her what exactly he was experimenting with now. He agreed to explain to her, but did not know where to start. Suddenly, he felt a strange sensation in his body. His vision began to blur, and his thoughts became confused. It seemed he just froze in place, and although he heard them asking what was wrong with him, he could not answer. The words would not come out. He felt exactly the same as before when he was transferred to this world. After some time, he finally woke up. In front of him stood Leo, Claire, and Sebastian, who were glad that he finally woke up. It turned out that he was still in the same world. Lying on the bed, he asked what had happened to him. They explained that he suddenly fainted when they were all in the living room. And then he finally remembered that he was talking to her when suddenly his head started spinning. He jokingly said that after all the adventures in the forest, at least he had a good rest. This made her laugh, and she was simply glad that he was okay. Suddenly Leo jumped on him and started licking him very energetically until he repeatedly asked her to stop. Claire told him that Leo was very worried about him. She didn't leave his bedside for a moment, but now he had already woken up. He was fighting for his life to save himself from her, who was exhausted, and everyone just laughed, deciding that these two really were like two peas in a pod. Later, he was sitting again with Claire over a cup of tea, and she asked if he remembered what had happened to him before he fainted. He recalled that they had just returned from the forest and then talked about something. Suddenly, his vision began to blur, and everything gradually started to darken before his eyes. She felt sorry for him because it was probably scary to see nothing. Sebastian suggested that the cause of his fainting might be related to his abilities. He explained to him that there are old records about these gifts, and they say that if you use the gift too often, you can lose consciousness, so you need to be careful with it. But there were also those who used their abilities very often and constantly, and did not feel any negative consequences. Therefore, it was still unclear whether this was due to the nature of the ability itself or the person who uses it. He also said that he has powers, besides mana, that allow him to use his gift. Surprised, Takumi asked him what other abilities he had, and you replied that they still could not confirm it because very few people could use the gifts, and precisely because of this, there were not enough people for research. He suggested that it could have happened because he used his herbs so much for growing in the forest. However, he noted that he fainted only after he returned home. The unit indicates that according to the records, the duration of the gift's effect greatly depended on its strength and method of use. The longer something was used, the more it burdened the person, and the less time it was used, the easier it became for the user. Although all this has already been told before, he also emphasized that all this is just a supposition. It is also quite possible that he is not limited to just growing herbs, but continues to work with them further. He remembered that the grass he applied to Fenrir's wounds began to glow, and this does not happen with ordinary plants. Now that he remembered it, Takumi also realized that it was really strange. But Sebastian also told him that as soon as he fainted, the Fenrir he saved also immediately became motionless and stopped moving. This surprised him greatly. But fortunately, the wounds had already healed, so he quickly regained consciousness. So, considering all this, Sebastian believed that the grass he created did not just instantly heal Fenrir. It helped him look completely healthy and strong, but in reality, the grass gradually healed him over time. He shared the power of his gift, and this continued until he completely ran out of strength in the room and fainted. But all this was just his guess, and with that he ended his reflections. Claire suggested, if this is really the case, then he should try not to use his talent for growing grass for some time. But on the other hand, he said that if this theory is correct, all he needs to do is avoid growing plants with constant effects. Then his ability really becomes very useful. She agreed that this might be so, but still wanted him to promise not to overexert himself. He nodded and thanked her for her concern. When everything else was already discussed, she reminded him that she was still waiting for the results of his experiments with his abilities. And then he finally remembered that it was at that moment he suddenly fainted. He explained to her that it all started when he tried to conduct the first experiments with growing his flock. Then he accidentally created a leaf that was not written about in any book. He just left this leaf on the table in his room and did nothing with it, but that same night Leo still ate this leaf. As soon as she did it, she immediately became very energetic and said she felt better than ever. Claire remembered that he also gave him something similar in the forest, and he confirmed that it was there that this idea came to him. But after that, he understood something. Earlier, when he was growing herbs, he only imagined what they looked like, but did not think about their effect. But when he was growing herbs before, he did not know at all what they would look like. Sebastian was impressed and asked again if he really meant that he just wanted to see the plant, and it appeared before him. The main thing was that it was exactly an herb, and he confirmed that this was the result of his experiments. Tellura was simply amazed when she heard this. However, Sebastian continued to advise him not to use them often because it could harm him as well, as happened today. He agreed with him and promised that he would think everything over. Besides, he was going to grow herbs for sale, and upon hearing this, Claire asked again if she had understood him correctly. He bowed to her and thanked her for the previously suggested business idea. And he decided that he wanted to go to the herb shop with her, if of course he did not feel worse. This made her very happy, and on behalf of the entire Zhukel family, she quickly told Sebastian that they needed to tell her father about this and ask for his permission. He also reminded her what would happen to her if she talked to him. She had to think in advance about how she would refuse the new marriage proposals he would still make to her. But now she did not care, she just wanted to celebrate this special event. Sebastian was also happy about it, and Takami was just watching them, thinking that they had probably gotten too carried away with this deal. Tellura said that they still needed to come up with a name for little Fenrir. Claire also agreed that it was strange when something has no name. Also, Takumi noted that because of this, Fenrir might get the impression that he has approached them. But first, they needed to find out whether it was male or female. She picked it up and asked Sebastian to look at it. He confirmed that it really was a female, just like Lev. Since that was the case, Claire petted her and wondered which name would suit her best. Sebastian suggested naming her, but she simply refused him because it was not a suitable name for a girl at all. And he became sad. Then Claire voiced a name that, in her opinion, was perfect. She wanted to name her Sherry because this name means beloved.